from the full committee who represents the Virgin Islands and Representative Velasquez from New York is authorized to participate in today's hearing. And with that, I'd like to recognize Representative Plaskett.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I just wanted to get straight to the questions. I wanted to ask Ms. Williams-Octalien some information about the recovery process in the Virgin Islands. If you could tell us, I understood, now we know that we had damage to both of the hospitals. Can you tell us what the assessment is? There are only 2 hospitals and 1 clinic in the Virgin Islands. And what is the assessment of those 3 facilities and where are they now?
So the Wang F. Louis Hospital on St. Croix has gotten authorization for replacement, and St. Thomas, the Roy Lester Schneider Hospital, we're still working on getting our damage descriptions being worked through with FEMA, and we have the temporary facilities over in Myra Keating on St. John that the clinic is now performing services there. One of the key issues that we're having, basically, as much as Puerto Rico has stated that we're working on several things from FEMA that will allow us to move forward, so we're really in a holding pattern. 1, cost escalation factors. In order to complete the fixed cost estimates, we must agree on what the cost escalation factors would be over the life of the disaster and the recovery, because once we agree to the fixed cost estimate, that is the cost that we will have to live with throughout the disaster until the project is finished. We are still waiting for FEMA to provide that to us, and until we're able to do that, we're unable to move forward with any of our permanent work in the territory.
So let's go to one of those hospitals. Let's talk about Juan F. Louis Hospital. You stated that FEMA has agreed that it needs to be replaced, which means that it was more than 50% damage, correct?
Correct.
When did that agreement take place, the 50% damage?
We've only agreed to that last month.
So they just agreed 20-something months after the hurricane that, in fact, the only hospital on St. Croix was damaged more than 50%.
Correct.
And in the interim, because there's more than 50% damage, which means that it must have difficulty in performing its functions, we understand that there was supposed to be a modular unit which was agreed upon that would take the place. Is that modular unit in place?
No, the modular unit is still being worked on to be put in place. So we're still working on that as well.
So there's no modular hospital on one of the major islands, and that hospital, that modular unit is estimated to be in place at what time?
The rate that we're going at this pace right now will not be until spring of next year.
So another year before the temporary modular to await the hospital would be in place. So you obviously have a hospital that's not functioning entirely as it should. Right. How many operating rooms is at the hospital right now?
We have 1 functional operating room.
So I recall this weekend, and St. Croix is the island that I live on. I know that we had a major car accident where there was 1 fatality. People were brought to the hospital, as well as a shooting where individuals were eventually succumbed to the shooting. How does a hospital function in that manner when there's 1 hospital and 1 operating room?
And the situation is very grave and very critical. And as you mentioned, if we have more than 1 emergency at one time, we're really at a loss to be able to provide those services. Hence, we continue to airlift our residents to other facilities in order to get acute care. And that cannot happen quickly, because the nearest destination would probably be Puerto Rico or Miami.
So I'm going to use this time, rather than asking you questions, just outlining for my colleagues the kind of situation that Virgin Islanders face, to allow you to use the rest of my time to tell us what would be best for us to help you to facilitate this. Because, as you and I have spoke, Adrienne, a saying that we have in the Virgin Islands, a closed mouth doesn't get fed.
Absolutely.
So Virgin Islanders have a habit of just muddling through things, being proud and not really being the type to complain. But if there are challenges that you're facing, if you could enlighten my colleagues as to what we as members of Congress can do, what those challenges are, so that we could figure out how we can facilitate moving things along a little faster.
And thank you for that. The overall pace of the recovery has been very, very slow, and it's really the ability for us to move forward in that process, whether it's the FEMA funds or it's the hazard mitigation funds or the CDBG-DR funding. Overall, the process is absolutely frustrating, confusing, and slow. And we've been asking FEMA and working with FEMA to allow us to move forward on some of the issues that we have over the time it takes for approvals for certain things that we've asked for, strategies that we've developed in the territory to move forward. We request those strategies and approval for those strategies to whatever the federal agency, and it takes an inordinate amount of time for us to get a response back, sometimes making that strategy null and void because we've missed a window of opportunity. And we're continuing to see that. We also, our fact that we're not able to get any of our projects moving forward, whether it's our schools, our roads, our critical facilities, the hospitals, as you mentioned, even our housing communities. We have still at the point where we're waiting on cost escalation factors from FEMA. We're waiting on information regarding cost share. All of those factors and the timeline for the guidance that has been given, we continue to expound the importance and the appreciation that we have for all of the legislative reform regarding disaster relief. But until we get guidance from either HUD or FEMA, we're unable to access those new authorities that are provided through the legislation. So when we have these legislations go forward, we ask that if there's specific timelines that can be put in place to ensure that these federal agencies do things in a timely manner, thereby allowing us to really access the authorities that have been granted.
Thank you very much for that response, and thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence in allowing her to respond.
Well, thank you.